Do you have a dream that is a small seed of an idea and it's ready to sprout?
Or are you in the workplace weeds and you need to bloom in a new creative way?
Perhaps you're ready to embrace and grow a more vibrant, joyful, and authentic life. If you answered yes to any of these, you are ready to rebloom. Welcome to the podcast where we have enlightening chats with nature lovers, makers, and artisans as they share inspiring stories about pivoting to a heart-centered passion.
Hello, I'm Lori Siebert, and I am very curious to hear from friends and artisans about the creativity that blooms when you follow your heart.
And I'm Jamie Jameson, and I want to dig deep into the why behind each courageous leap of faith and walk through new heart-centered gardens.
Each episode of ReBloom will be an in-depth conversation with guests who, through self-discovery, shifted to share their passions with the world.
Get ready to find your creative joy as we plant the seeds for you to rebloom.
Hello, welcome everyone to another episode of ReBloom. I'm Lori Siebert.
And I'm Jamie Jameson.
And today, Jamie, we get the pleasure of talking with Harrison Turner, who I got to meet when I taught at Perigord Retreats last September.
I am so jealous. I am so jealous, but now everybody gets to meet him. I'm so excited for this interview.
Just wait. He's so charming, and the story of how he ended up where he is and what he's doing is so inspiring and so fascinating. So I can't wait to talk to him.
Well, let's dive in, and hello, Harrison, and welcome.
Well, I should probably start off by saying thank you very much for inviting me. And secondly, I had a hunch that we were going to get on really well, Laurie, because both of you are businesswomen, and I'm sure you have the same feeling as me. But when you don't really know someone, or when you haven't really dealt with someone, and you're going backwards and forwards by email or by text, asking loads of questions, and there's just always little bits, and it just kind of feels like a never-ending thing. That wasn't the case with Laurie. Laurie was kind of, yeah, okay, let's do a workshop. There's 1 booking, 2 bookings, 3 bookings, 4 bookings, fully booked. See you in September. And that was kind of it. And for me, that's always a massive, massive green flag. When people just get on with it. They don't talk about it. They don't ask questions. They just get on with it. So I had a big hunch that we were going to get on well. And I think it turned out really well, because you're coming back in 2025.
Well, that's how I roll.
Absolute pleasure on our behalf.
My husband doesn't always appreciate my travel style. He's like, you and I don't travel the same, because I just like the week before I start figuring out what I'm going to pack. And yeah, I just roll with it.
Definitely.
You know, but you're also a great connector too, because you were over there and you met Harrison and you're like, oh my gosh, you have to talk to him. He's incredible. And we had an amazing conversation about social media and growing his social. And I love that. So even though I haven't been there yet, Harrison, but I definitely want to come over. It sounds dreamy and it's going to be amazing. And so we cannot wait to hear your story about how you ended up in France, because you're not French, are you?
No, not at all. I'm about as English as it gets. So I was originally a basketball player. I was one of those kids growing up that was full of energy and had to stay busy. Like, I couldn't sit in a class for 8 hours a day focusing. So actually my mum made me start swimming when I was 8 years old, competitive swimming. So 8 to 12, that's what I did. Somewhere between 7 and 10 times a week, and that kind of took the edge off my energy levels to a point where I could actually focus at school. But it wasn't my passion. It definitely taught me a lot of things, discipline, responsibility, but it wasn't my passion. So alongside that, I played soccer, what we call football in the UK. But again, I was okay, but I was nothing special. But it was fun. And then when I went to secondary school or high school, I picked up a basketball on my first day at school. First lunchtime, there's 3 basketball courts laid down next to each other outside. I picked up a basketball and I started playing with my friends. And it really was one of those things where it's just immediately I just fell in love with it. So I went from someone who'd never really played basketball, never considered it as a real option, to just I couldn't get enough of it. So we start school in the UK. We start school in September. So it's just autumn starting. It's getting colder and colder. So I remember that first winter, I was out every single night on the driveway, shooting a basketball. With gloves on, fog, ice, rain, whatever weather. I was just obsessed, absolutely obsessed with it. And that kind of didn't really change all throughout high school. I was that kid that would at lunchtime I'd go and play basketball. We've got our school shoes on, long trousers, t-shirt, tie, and I'd just go in covered in sweat after lunch. That was me. So whoever was sitting next to me in afternoon class, they suffered.
Poor kids.
Yeah, definitely. And so, it's like when you're that age, you think you're going to the NBA, you think you're going to be a superstar. And an infinitely small percentage of people make it. I wasn't part of that percentage, unfortunately. I wasn't good enough. But I did a lot of things with basketball and really, really enjoyed it. I got to play in 17 or 18 countries across Europe in different tournaments. I played in national championships. We won 4 national championships. Just pretty much won everything there is to win in the UK, without ever being a star, if you like. Well, when I was younger, I was good. But as you get older, I got more and more competitive. And that's when I sort of realized that it was never going to be a full professional career for me. It was only ever going to be maybe a vehicle that I could use to get some experiences. But realistically, I was never going to become rich. I was never going to become famous. None of that, not that kind of level. So I finished my studies when I was 21, and my parents decided that they wanted to move to France. So this was in my final year of studies. And in the UK, you do 3 years of studies, and then you graduate, and then you go into a job. I went to a good basketball university, but it's sort of everything finishes at the same time. So when I graduated, I had no club, I had no job, and so it was kind of the perfect opportunity for me to try something new.
Yeah, and your parents moved. They moved from
Exactly.
England to France. So
Yeah.
they didn't give you their forwarding address, I hope.
Well, yeah, I actually moved out a month after they did. So it all happened quite quickly, really.
Yeah.
So then I got out there end of November in 2015, and by the middle of January, I'd signed up for the local basketball club.
This is in France.
Yeah, this is in France.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Straight away, I had to find some friends.
Yeah.
To put simply. And this was a club at quite a low level, if you like. But that's actually where I met Katel, because if you imagine France, actually, the map of France looks like a hexagon. And we're somewhere in the bottom left in the southwest, and she's from the northwest. And she moved down to where we live now at the same time that I moved down, literally a month apart. And we both joined the same club at the same time in January.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That's
it. Yeah. It's a massive coincidence, but depends if you believe in that kind of thing or not.
I totally do.
So
I totally do.
Between that January and May, we didn't really talk much. We kind of just, the boys team and the girls team sort of, we practiced after each other, and sometimes we'd have games on the same day. So we used to hang around together a bit. And sort of over those next few months, we developed a bit of a relationship, and sort of never looked back, really.
Yeah.
Like to the point where my idea was to sort of come to France for a year or two, and then learn French, and then probably go back to England, and because I speak 2 languages, I'll be more employable. I'll be able to get a new job. No, I've been here for 8 years now. And it's like you find a partner and build a life together, and it kind of goes from there, really, doesn't it? Now we've got our son. But yeah, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself a bit. So I played with this club at a low level, and then I moved to a different club in a different town, and that was kind of a semi-professional. So we got paid a bit, but not enough to live on. So it's actually bad. It's really, really hard, because you're training like a professional, and you're still living like a professional, but you still have to work. So you're just constantly exhausted. Exhausted, and you're just doing it for the love of it, just because you're passionate about it and nothing else.
How long did you do that?
So I did that for 3 years. I mean, I guess it's like when you're my experience with artists is a lot of them had a different career first, and becoming a professional artist is kind of a second career for them. Like maybe they worked in advertising, or they did some kind of creative profession, and then and then moved into art from that. Does that sound about right to you guys? So when you're making that transition,
well,
yeah,
yeah, there's transitions all along the way, I think, but always something creative if you're lucky.
yeah. And when you're making that transition, it's hard because you're kind of doing both, and it's exhausting.
Yeah. So that's well, but then how did you go from doing that to being a host of artist retreats? That's a very big leap.
That's a huge leap.
Yeah, so I'm getting there, if you can bear with me. So because I was only a semi-professional, I still had to work. And obviously I just moved to France, didn't really speak French that well. And actually ended up working with a guy who had a similar kind of concept to what we do now. And they'd been doing it for quite a while. And I ended up working with them for a season and a half. And at the end of that, I said to him, there's some stuff that you do really well, and some stuff that you do not quite so well. And I've got some skills, I studied marketing and business. I think you could, I tried to sort of carve out a bit more responsibility for myself. And it didn't happen, to my benefit, actually. So with my parents, we decided that we would try and do the same thing ourselves, with the property that my parents had bought when they moved to France. So we kind of took some inspiration from them and then added a whole load of stuff to it to make it ours and sort of make it work better with who we are as people and how we operate. So I did that with my parents for a few years. My parents retired. So then Katel and I kind of took over the business after COVID, and took things to another level. So we've had our best year, 2022, 2023, and this year looks like another incredible year. 2025 looks amazing, even going into 2026. So, to cut a long story short, I never, ever thought I would do anything to do with art. but here we are. It's just taking advantage of opportunities as they come up.
That was a very big pivot. That was a very big pivot.
Harrison,
Absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about the place, about what you've started. So you were doing basketball, and then you were working. And, for many people, they're looking to find their passion and their heart. And you actually found it as a very young boy and had to leave something that you felt very passionate and loved. But you found something else now that you are, I think, very much equally passionate, maybe in a very different way. But can you tell us about your new business and what it involves?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think playing basketball growing up, you learn so many skills that are transferable. You learn discipline, responsibility, working in a team, and actually just perseverance. You ladies know what it's like when you're starting a business. It just feels like you're confronting a new problem every day, and then you find a solution to it. And you're like, yes, that's a little win. And then you put that in your back pocket, you wake up the next day, you do the same thing again. And then when you look back 3 years behind you, you think, well, we've come a long way. We've made a lot of progress. And I suppose as much as I was passionate about basketball, I'm also passionate about that process of just sort of solving problems and building stuff from nothing. That's something it's just really, really fun.
Fantastic.
I think it's it's knowing you. I mean, I am just super impressed that you are, can I tell your age?
Yeah, sure.
You're 30 years old and you are running this business. And I just was so inspired by your entrepreneurial spirit. And you not only started the artist retreat business, but you're also growing on your property and creating products, which is a whole nother business. So clearly you are not afraid of approaching a problem and figuring out how to solve it. That's just, I think, in you.
Well, I tell you what, that might be an even sillier story why we started that. So,
tell us about that. Tell us about that. What are you doing?
So we have over 5,000 lavender plants now on our property.
Oh my gosh.
yeah. So it started as about 20, and then 200, then 400, and over the 3 or 4 years, we ended up with 5,000. To cut a long story short, we used to take our artists to a lavender farm that was about 40 minutes away, but we're in French countryside, so really, really windy roads, steep hills. And one day we had a client she wasn't sick in the car, but she wasn't far off. And at that point I said, look, I'm not going to this lavender farm. It's lovely, but I'm not going there anymore. I'm bringing the lavender farm to us. We had a field behind the house that had perfect soil for growing lavender. And I thought, well, it wasn't going to take 2 days to plant a load of lavender plants, and then next year they're going to look amazing. And for a month, people are going to have the smell of lavender wafting through the open windows in the morning. They're going to be able to go and take photos with the sunrise and the sunset. We sort of, when we planted the lavender, we took all of these things into consideration, so that we could try and sort of make the most of it from that sense. And in the first instance, it was just for artists to paint, to pick, and just to be around. And then at the end of July that year, after the blooming season of lavender, what do we do now? The lavender looks terrible.
Yeah.
So we had to cut it. So the first year we cut it, that was it. Left it to the next year. The next year said, well, maybe this year we should distill it. So in the second year we started selling lavender products. So it's just one product. It was just essential oils, lavender essential oils in sort of tiny little 10 milliliter containers, and that sold well. And then we planted more lavender, and then we added a few products. So we added some soap, a body scrub, a shea butter body scrub, a balm, and I think now we're up to about 8 or 9 different products that we sell primarily to our artists, but also on our e-commerce site online. And we've got it in a few shops. There's lots of tourist shops in our area, so we're sort of trying to build a foundation where we can find a solid way to grow over the next few years in that sense too.
I love how that. In your story, it seems like you hit a roadblock or an obstacle or some kind of challenge, and instead of just giving up, you figure out a way to make it an opportunity. And I think that's really cool about your story.
Yeah, it's the fun side of it. It's just the fun of solving problems, really. I mean, I don't think I'm exceptionally intelligent or I don't think I have any exceptional skills in that sense. I just genuinely enjoy the process of trying to get from point A to point B.
Let's take a quick minute and thank our amazing sponsors. Our podcast is proudly brought to you today by Jet Creative and UrbanStems. Jet Creative is a women-owned marketing firm committed to community and empowerment since 2013. Are you ready to rebloom and build a website or start a podcast? Visit jetcreative.com/podcast to kickstart your journey. They will help you bloom in ways you never imagined. And bonus, our listeners get an exclusive discount when you mention ReBloom. And a huge thanks to UrbanStems, your go-to and our go-to source for fresh, gorgeous bouquets and gifts delivered coast to coast. Use Bloom Big 20 and save 20% on your next order. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and follow us on Instagram and Facebook at ReBloom Podcast. Thanks to our sponsors, and thanks to you for joining us today. I mean, we talk about getting into the weeds or the challenges. And sometimes people get very discouraged. And, what do you do with old lavender? Well, you turn it into something even more beautiful and create another business out of it. And you never know what's going to bloom if you just try. And that is the beauty of what you're doing, Harrison. You two are really throwing out the seeds and seeing what blooms, but with some research and hard work too.
Well, that's what I was going to say. That's the other thing that impresses me about you, Harrison, is because we've had conversations about the product side of your business, and because we're maybe doing some branding together. And you planted these plants, but when I spoke to you about the brand and what it means to you, you're also researching the land and how to properly use the land, and how you dig deep when you go into something. So you're not just blindly hopping into something. I think you really research it and figure out what's the best way to do something.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we first moved out to France, I was thinking about different ways that we could earn money. And one of the rabbit holes I went down was actually market gardening. So, there's loads of different ways of doing that. You can just sort of exhaust the land, growing things intensively, trying to earn as much money as you can. And that might last 10, 15 years. But it's such a physically intensive job that most people don't do it for much longer than that anyway. So, yeah, if you destroy your land in 10 or 15 years, well, you're gonna do something else after anyway.
Yeah.
But you have to take the environment into consideration, right? If everyone just made a tiny bit of effort to leave everything slightly better than they found it, the world would be in a much better place. I'm sure we can all agree on that, right?
Right.
Absolutely. And particularly if you're growing lavender, because, oh my gosh, I want to come over there and smell that beautiful lavender too. It's just
it's incredible.
amazing. Harrison, for our listeners, because it's, can you describe the space that you've created? Because they're just going to be listening to this, and take us on a journey of your space and your farm and the space and what you do when you welcome the artist to France. What does it look like?
So we have 2 houses that are on so we've got a fenced property. It's not very big. It's about 5 acres that's fenced off together, and it's kind of divided into 2. So as you come through the front gate, you've got two houses, one that's just to your right, and then one that's a little bit in the background on the left. And between the 2 houses, we've got a covered swimming pool, a jacuzzi surrounded by palm trees, some nice steps going down into the studio that's at the bottom of the house. A truffle orchard in front of the house. So that was so they're over 100 years old, these truffle oaks. And they still produce truffles. We managed to find 4 or 5 this year. I've got a friend with a dog who comes and hunts for them with his dog. I don't like truffles, but some people do.
Okay, I'm coming definitely for the truffles. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And actually, you know what? Just in terms of the experience that we offer, we've learned so much since coming here. And it's not. I can't define it in one way, because it depends on the weather. It depends on the season. It depends on what you want to get out of the workshop. Now we've got to a point where we have a list of 60 or 70 locations to visit, depending on what you want. So, for example, if you love flowers, then April and May is full of poppies. The farmers here, they don't use many pesticides. So where you've got a field of wheat, in April or May, it looks more like a poppy field.
Wow.
Yeah, just acres and acres of red poppies. It's phenomenal. So at the start of the season, as we're sort of driving around, we're looking for where the poppies are coming up, so that when we've got a group who's interested in flowers, they're going to come and paint this field. Try and find something nice in the foreground, something nice in the background. So it's not just a boring field of poppies. And then moving on into early summer, so June and July, you've got lavender. And we've actually got 3 varieties of lavender that flower at slightly different times. So instead of having a 3-week flowering season, we've got 6 weeks. We try and make that season a bit longer so that more people get to experience that. After the lavender, you've got sunflowers, and then heading into late summer, early autumn, you've got the vineyards. So if you like flowers and that type of thing, there's something for you all season. It just depends on what you want.
Well, being someone who got to go there and teach there, what I really so appreciated is your attention to detail. And you allow the instructor to kind of set the itinerary a little bit. My group wanted to do a daily excursion. So off we went every morning to a neighboring village, or Josephine Baker's chateau, which was amazing, or just very inspiring.
She's a phenomenal woman. What an incredible life.
Oh my God. That day was one of my favorites. So we go out in the day and morning and get all this inspiration. And then we went back and worked in the studio in the afternoon. And then the meals, oh my God, because Katel and the rest of your team, the food that they serve was out of this world. You just really made everyone feel like they were really special and pampered, and it's a trip that I'll never forget, and I'm so excited I get to come back again.
I think the reality of that is we feel a big responsibility, because you've got people who are, a lot of our guests who join us, It's the first time they go on this type of workshop, and very often it's the last time. So this is kind of I don't want to say it's a massive part of their lives, but there's potential for it to be very, very memorable. And we definitely feel that responsibility. So that's why people always ask, oh, can I have an itinerary before I book? And I said, no, you can't, because I don't know you. I don't know what you want to see. And I want to make sure you get to see exactly what you want. So when you get here, we'll talk about it. We'll be flexible, and you'll get what you want.
Which I loved that. And I loved, we even based it on what the weather was going to be like that week to make sure that we took that into consideration and polled everybody in the group on, these are the choices of places we can go to. What are you really most interested in? But then when we were out and about, you would pull out all this gorgeous food and serve a picnic by a river or like looking at a castle but you had it down to such a great rhythm that it seemed effortless, which I know it is not.
Well, I think you were our 11th workshop of the season last year. So I think by the 11th workshop, we were in a pretty good rhythm.
You were a well-oiled machine by then.
Yeah, definitely.
How many workshops do you do, Harrison, a year? And how many people do you welcome each time?
So workshops tend to be sort of 7 to 12 people, depending on if there's a couple or people who don't mind sharing bedrooms. So sometimes there's 2 sisters who want to share. So sort of small groups, because we find that if you have less than 7, it can be quite intense socially, because there's not enough variety amongst the group. But if you have more than 12, then it's kind of hard. It'd be impossible for Laurie to give everyone enough time individually if there were more than 12 people. I mean, already, most artists come here and they need 3 weeks to recover because it is intense. It's very intense. So to do that with more than 12 people is just impossible. So it's kind of a balancing. Obviously, it's a business, so you have to make money. So it's a question of balancing group sizes, making sure that everyone can get what they want without feeling like a number or we have to keep that personal side to things. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. You have to keep it personal.
Absolutely.
But,
well, it sounds like you're doing that. I'm sorry, Laura, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, it sounds like you're doing that. There's, the big word bespoke. It sounds like you're really creating specialized, unique experiences for both the artist who's running the retreat and certainly keeping in tune the guests. And, I love that you're not forcing not only what you grow on your land, but you're also not forcing people to jump into a particular model. You're encouraging people to do what they love and to experience that. And that's beautiful, Harrison. That really is.
Yeah, definitely. I think we kind of pride ourselves on trying our best to understand what people want to get out of it. But also we do try and push people a little bit as well. So one thing I always say to people is, even if you for example, a lot of people don't particularly like plein air painting because they're intimidated by the changing weather conditions or people looking over their shoulder. And I've realized over the years that actually you should force people to do it just once throughout the workshop. Just sit there and paint for an hour. That's it. Just take your journal out, find a quiet spot in the shade and just paint. And no one has ever regretted it. You might be happy with your painting, you might not be happy with it, but you will not regret it, because when you confront something that you find difficult, you always feel better after. You always feel like you've taken one tiny step closer to the goal. It could be a tiny step, it could be a massive step, but you always come away with positives from that kind of thing.
That reminds me of when I taught one of the women in the group, you know who she is, she expressed to me that the reason she came was she wanted to learn how to paint big, bold florals. Well, I specifically don't do big things when I'm teaching overseas because you don't know what the space will be and people are traveling with supplies. And so I was keeping things more tabletop size. So I thought, okay, how can I figure this out to make her happy? So taped 4 pieces of paper together, 4 11x17s, taped them to the walls, then taped newspaper around them so we wouldn't get paint on your walls. And we all painted big, bold florals. And it was interesting because when I first said that's what what we were going to do, everyone in the group was a little bit terrified because they tend to paint really small and, their head down. And so this was something new to them. But I think that was one of the best exercises because they faced something they hadn't done and challenged themselves, and they ended up loving it. So I think you're absolutely right. Just pushing yourself a little bit out of your comfort zone usually ends up taking you somewhere really fun and exciting.
I think that is one of the best afternoons paintings that I've seen in that studio. People were so happy. There was just there was a buzz in that room.
Yeah, there really was. It was pretty. So we have to thank our friend Greta.
Absolutely.
For that.
Absolutely.
Because she's the one who pushed me to I went to bed that night because I had kind of my itinerary figured out, and talk about pivoting. I thought, okay, I want to make sure everyone here is pleased with what they're doing and what they're learning, and how can I figure this out? And Katel went out and got me some large paper that I could tape together, and you allowed me to tape it to the walls. We didn't get much paint on the wall, just a little bit.
It's an art studio. That's what it's there for.
Yeah.
But it's beautiful because you both have expressed when you face challenges, it's not a no, it's a pivot. And how can you make an opportunity out of it? And Lori, you did it when you were at the retreat, and Harrison does it each and every day, which is just phenomenal. It begs the question, with all these artists around and your love of plein air, and were you creative? Are you creative, or are you finding joy in creativity now?
Do you know what? After following artists around for a year, I would never want to share this region with anyone but an artist. You guys have this capacity to appreciate things at such a deeper level than just your average tourist. There's so many things that you see that regular people like me don't see. When you talk about contrast, lights and darks, composition within a specific scene, you guys have just got this level of appreciation that it just never gets boring to watch. I mean, I go to these places, I don't know, 10, 15 times a year, and I should be bored of it. But what keeps it interesting is the reaction on the artist's face when they get to a spot, and then seeing what they produce and seeing how excited they are about it. We never get bored of that. We never get. Katel and I talk about it so often. We never ever get bored of that.
I love traveling with creative people. That's one of the reasons I love teaching. I was just in Oaxaca with a group of artists, and we walk through the town, and we're taking pictures of doors and shadows and windows and sewer grates on the ground. Like, everything is inspiration. And in contrast, I've traveled with a group of people who are not artists, and I'm always lagging behind because, they're full speed ahead to the next wherever they're going. And I'm like, oh, look at that. Oh, look at that. So you are completely right that that's how artists go through life. They see everything.
Oh, there's
inspired by everything.
There is no doubt about it. There's a correlation. I'm sure artists are the happiest people in the world. I'm sure of it. They seem to just kind of, well, that's the way they come across to me anyway.
Well, we certainly in France for a week would be extremely happy. But I think you're right. We see things, it's interesting. I was a late in life photographer, and my world and my perspective completely changed because I started seeing things, as Lori said, you look at grates, you look at shadows, you look at light. And even though you go to those same old places, Harrison, I bet now you look at them differently. You see them differently because through an artist's eyes, it's almost like a child's eye. It's just always different, and it's always unique, and it's always beautiful. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, to build on that point, there's when we go to specific villages, there's always certain things that everyone paints, but then there's always new things that pop up, and that's that sort of unique ability of an artist to find the beauty within the mundane.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a question. So you had your passion was basketball. You made a pivot mostly out of necessity. Do you have regrets? Do you miss that passion that you once had?
I think I've still got that passion. It's just not with basketball. It's with these new projects that we have, and sort of trying to take them in the right direction. Yeah. So from a passion perspective, no, don't miss it at all. I'm definitely the type of person who likes to go all in. And you can't manage, you can't do everything. And that was kind of a hard lesson for me to learn, because just before COVID, I was playing basketball semi-professionally. I was working in sort of a marketing agency in the Netherlands, sort of marketing and recruitment. We did a lot of that. So I was traveling to the Netherlands once a month for a week. I was playing basketball every weekend, training almost every day, trying to work out to stay in shape, trying to find time for Katel. We didn't have Gabriel at this point, and it was impossible. I was exhausted. I ended up getting a couple of serious injuries. Wasn't doing as well at work as I could have been. And so, yeah, when you're passionate and you try and do everything, actually it's better to find choose one thing that you really enjoy and do more of that and get better at that, because you can't do everything. You can't do everything.
You know, Harrison, you're so right. And, Lori and I are a few clicks older than you are, but you are so blessed in you found your passion as a young boy, which oftentimes people don't, but you had that courage to take that leap of faith to find yet another passion early on that sounds like it's going to sustain you and be your life, be a beautiful life, because you had the courage to follow your dreams. And that's what everybody should do. And, it's amazing. And I would imagine you're working in a different way, just as hard as you did when you were playing basketball. Probably as exhausting, but different.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the best parts of it as well is actually I get to share it with Katel now. And Gabriel, our son Gabriel, as he's growing up, I mean, he might be involved, he might not be, but the fact that we both have the opportunity to work very close to home. In the winter, we've got much more time to spend with him and with each other. And that's really important as well, because I suppose I'm lucky in the sense that I can be obsessed with work, and it doesn't mean that I have to sacrifice spending time with them, because it's combined. Katel and I work together. We both love it. And yeah, it's a big blessing to be able to do that.
I love that, and I got to witness that. I mean, seeing her passion about the food and what she's serving to the guests is equal to your passion of finding the best places to take us to and being charming the whole time.
I think we all need. I'm coming with you, Lori, when you go to France. I must come. Oh my gosh,
okay. Next fall.
So Harrison, how do people find you? Do they go through the artist, or do they go to your website, or how would people inquire about having a retreat with you?
So if you're a student and you're looking for a workshop to join, then you can look at the list of artists we've got in 2024 and 2025 on Perigord-retreats.com. So that's Perigord-retreats.com.
Super.
At that point, you can see a list of everyone we work with. And if you're interested in a specific artist, then you should definitely reach out to them. They're always more than happy to talk to you.
Fabulous. Yes. And we will have that in the show notes too. So you can find Harrison's links to both his social and to his website in our show notes as well.
Well, I love your story. I love it. I'm so glad you joined us and shared this with us.
Well, I'm just as interested to hear about your stories. I mean, now's not the time, but from what you've told me, Laurie, and from the discussions we've had, Jamie, you guys have got some really, really interesting projects coming up, and I'm definitely keeping my eye out on all of those.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for reblooming with us, Harrison. You're the best.
You guys are great too. Thank you very much.
We'll be talking soon. We have lots to do together.
Definitely. Definitely.
Thank you so much. I'm Jamie Jameson.
And I'm Lori Siebert.
And we hope you will join us again for another episode of ReBloom. Thank you, everyone. Peace, love, and ReBloom, dear friends. Bye-bye. Life is too short not to follow your passions, so go out there and let your heart plant you where you are meant to be and grow your joy.
We will be right here sharing more incredible stories of reinvention with you. Make sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode of ReBloom.
Until next time, I'm Jamie Jameson.
And I'm Lori Siebert.
Peace, love, and ReBloom, dear friends.